Just a few miles off the California coast, one of nature's most spectacular sights. A humpback whale calf delighting the crowds on this whale watching tour. But life here in the Santa Barbara Channel comes with risk posed by those other giant beasts of the sea. The Channel is one of the busiest shipping routes in the world, and ship strikes can be fatal to whales.
In 2007, we really became aware of this issue. We had 5 confirmed ship strikes on whales in our channel in 3 weeks. And scientists actually estimate that there's probably up to 10 times more whales hit than actually are found. Whales are negatively buoyant, and so if they're struck, they sink. They don't always wash ashore. And so as we try to kind of grapple with the challenge, we recognize that we have whales in this area and ships, they're using the same area.
They persuaded shipping firms to slow down to 12 knots or less, reducing the chance that a ship strike will be fatal.
At the moment, this is just a pilot project. The shipping lines say that slowing down adds 4 hours to their journey, and that time costs money. Extending this project any longer means finding the money to continue to compensate them.
They pay £1,500 to every ship passing through the channel as an incentive.
Actually, I think it's funny that rewarding the ships instead of giving them a displeased asset, I think it's really good that they are that works actually.
People are waking up and becoming more conscious of these other creatures in the ocean. And obviously, it's not an issue with dolphins, but for whales moving much slower and not having the same sonar abilities, I think we have to take care.
Humans are benefiting too. Santa Barbara looks healthy and idyllic, but its air quality fails to meet state standards, and ships contribute half of the pollution.
If we can get several $1 million, then we would be able to expand the program, and then we would get the gains that we're really looking for, the air quality gains, and the public health. Not only the public health, but vegetation. Not only vegetation, but as you saw earlier today, the marine environment.
That marine environment is one of the most precious in the United States, and one which allows humans to get remarkably close to nature. Too close, though, can come at a high cost. Greg Milam, Sky News, Santa Barbara.
Bill, Chris just talked about ships coming in and out of ports. Now, you're based on the West Coast, and you've had a program of success working with some of these liner companies in terms of managing the speed and the trajectory and the routes that they take. Can you describe some of those programs?
Yep, I can. So, when national marine sanctuaries are designated in each location, there's an evaluation of what are the risks and the activities that need to be addressed through regulatory or non-regulatory programs. And shipping has arisen on a number of occasions, but only a few of the sites have regulations that address shipping. But rather, as time has gone on and issues have arisen, we've looked to what we call non-regulatory programs first as our kind of first order of business in addressing those. And not just on the West Coast, but in other parts of the country over the last 5 or 10 years, the concerns that we've had have dealt with wildlife impact, with whale strikes from vessels that are transiting national marine sanctuaries. And as you move north and west from LA Long Beach, Ventura County and Santa Barbara County form part of the Santa Barbara Channel, where the Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary is. And there are shipping lanes that take ships north and south, east and west, because it's kind of a twist in the coastline there. But in and out of those ports up to San Francisco and across the Pacific. And with a real increase in whale strikes, we've looked to a number of different initiatives that are non-regulatory. And the first and foremost was to seek voluntary reductions in speed from the vessels. And while the shipping companies and their contacts were really interested in that, there are these challenges, as Chris was alluding to getting the ship into the port at a berth, unloaded, reloaded, and back on its way. And so there was pretty low compliance with that. And the reason we wanted them to go slower was due to the fact that if a vessel strikes a whale, and these are the larger whales, blue whales, fin whales, humpback whales, and the vessel's going less than around 12 knots, the lethality drops by 50%. So it also gives the whale more time to get out of the way. So with the voluntary approach not working, we and a number of others, and that included the Santa Barbara County and Ventura County Air Pollution Control Districts and the Santa Barbara Foundation and the sanctuary, developed a program that tried to incentivize vessels going slower. And it was modeled after a program that is in place in LA Long Beach, where for air quality benefits, right? Ships moving slower have fewer emissions, they burn less fuel, there's less emissions. And for the air quality problems that Chris alluded to, LA and Long Beach have been instituting that kind of a program for a number of years. And so we are, in essence, extending that from 20 to 30 miles from the port, another 100 miles up through the Santa Barbara Channel. And that program required companies to meet a certain number of requirements. One is that they were participating already in the LA Long Beach speed reduction program. Past transits, they were going more than 14 knots. They would agree to reduce their speed to less than 12 knots. And we had, in the end, a number of cruise lines, shipping lines applied for that and were selected: Costco, Maersk, Matson, Mitsui, Hapag-Lloyd, K-Line, and United Arab Shipping. And total 35 ships with those companies applied for this program, and we accepted them. 8 of those, for various reasons, couldn't meet the speed requirements. They're paid after they slowed down. But 27 of those actually slowed down. And the program was administered by the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation, and each ship was paid $2,500 to go slower through the Santa Barbara Channel and into and out of the ports of LA and Long Beach. And so, you know, it was a trial program. It went on during the summer months last year, and that's important because that's when the air emissions are most problematic due to ozone formation from the NOx and some of the other greenhouse gas emissions that come out of the ships, but that's also when the whales are most abundant. So during that time, none of the ships struck a whale, so there's a positive result in that regard. And the air emissions were reduced by over 50%. So the air pollution control districts were very happy with it. In the end, we had more companies applying than we could afford, so that's also a testament that it must be, in a way, a successful program. And we're at the phase now where we're evaluating how do we either scale this up, how do we at least make it a longer-term program, maybe annually during the summer months in this area, what would that cost, et cetera. But from our view, and I think the shipping company's view, it was a successful effort at least incentivizing going slower. And to me, probably the most important thing was that it demonstrated to the shipping companies that, you know, maybe a little bit slower and, you know, 3 or 4 hour longer transit nonetheless was tolerable. They were still able to unload their ships, get them reloaded, and back up the coast. We didn't hear from any of them whether there were problems with that necessarily. And so that was important, I think, for them to realize, you know, maybe there's some future in a slightly slower speed in that area.
They're 2 totally different government agencies charged with protecting different aspects of our environment, but they're facing a common problem off the South Coast: the impacts of the 2,500 cargo ship trips which occur in the Santa Barbara Channel every year. Dave Van Mollem is director of the Santa Barbara County Air Pollution Control District.
We're a regulatory agency, but we're responsible for stationary sources. We do not regulate ocean-going ships, but ocean-going ships create about 50% of the ozone-forming pollutants out in our channel that affect our shore and our cities along the coast.
Sean Hastings is with the Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary, which is facing a much different issue in the Santa Barbara Channel.
In the same time of year that whales come to visit the Channel Islands Sanctuary in the Santa Barbara region, and they're here to feed on krill, it's also a busy time of year for shipping. And unfortunately, when the whale's favorite food, krill, is in the shipping lanes, that's where you find the whales, and when whales and ships are in the same place at the same time, whales often lose that challenge.
A coalition of groups which involve the Air Pollution Control District, the Marine Sanctuary, and the Environmental Defense Center have come up with a unique pilot program to try to address the ship-related concerns. Dave Van Mollem with the Air Pollution Control District.
The idea was to create an incentive program. We would be able to entice corporations to slow their ship speeds down as they enter the channel at point conception and maintain that slower speed all the way through the channel until they hit the ports of LA and Long Beach, where those ports have their own program.
But getting ships to reduce their speeds in the channel isn't a new idea. Marine biologists for years have been pushing to get the ships to slow down from their average 14 to 18 knot speeds to 10 knots to try to reduce whale strikes. But federal regulatory agencies refuse to establish speed limits. Voluntary compliance efforts went nowhere with a 1% participation rate. What the coalition came up with was offering incentives for companies to voluntarily participate.
We're offering cash, $2,500, which really is just a drop in the bucket for these very, very large multinational corporations. What we're offering them really is an opportunity to participate in an incentive program that benefits societies, and therefore showing that they have a corporate social responsibility.
The coalition raised $40,000 for the pilot program, which began in July and runs through October.
We were looking for a way to fund this incentive program, and one of our partners came across the idea of applying for a Santa Barbara Foundation grant. So the Environmental Defense Center, which pretty much led the grant project, helped us fill out the application, and we won a $20,000 grant. Then I went to our board of directors, the Air Pollution Control District, and asked them for matching funds, which they agreed to. Each one of the participating partners also contributes time and effort.
6 global shipping companies quickly signed up, filling all of the available slots in the pilot program.
We're going to trial slowing ships down, and the fact that we had funding for 16 transits and we received double that amount of interest shows that the industry is willing.
Sean Hastings with the Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary says it's pretty amazing that one effort can help reduce 2 very different environmental problems.
You know, it's rare, Lance, where you get an environmental problem that has a single solution. If we can improve human health, if we can protect whales, and at the same time, if we can keep that maritime commerce moving through the channel, getting to the ports, that's good for the economy too. You know, it's kind of a win all the way around.
While this effort is admittedly a drop in the bucket, the program's organizers hope it could lead to something more sustained on a larger scale. They're hoping to tap into some of the state's cap and trade money, which is supposed to be used to reduce greenhouse gases. Lance Orozco, KCLU News.
We've got news of another project that might help protect whales, the Blue Whales, Blue Skies Initiative. It's the brainchild of a group of marine conservation, pollution control, environmental protection, and shipping line interests that came together to try to clean up the air along Southern California's coastline and at the same time reduce the likelihood of ships running into whales. Living on Earth's John Duff spoke with Mary Bird of the Santa Barbara County Air Pollution Control District.
Can you paint us a picture of the ocean area that we're talking about? How big is the area and what's going on out there?
Well, Santa Barbara County on the coast of California has 130 miles of coastline, and just off our coast is the Santa Barbara Channel. Now, the channel is home to 2 giants that roam the oceans of the world. One is the container ship, which comes through the channel on its way to the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach. And the other is the blue whale, which comes to the channel to feed, and the channel is also a migratory path for a number of other endangered whale species. So these 2 are on a collision course, and this project is all about addressing both issues for common goals.
How big are these ships?
Well, they can be any number of sizes. These container ships have engines the size of a 3-story building. It's really very difficult to see the whale from the container ship. In one case, there's a situation where a ship came into port, and there was a bowfin over the bow, and the captain had no idea that the ship had struck a whale.
Can you tell us a little bit about how many ships are moving through that area on an annual basis and how many of the whales might be out there?
We know that the numbers vary a lot based on the shipping economy. Some years it's up to 2,500 transits through the channel. Some years it's much more. In terms of the whale species, there's a variety of different types of species. The gray whales are on a migration path through the channel. Now, they are not considered endangered, but there are other species that are. The blue whales come through the channel to feed. Not that much is known about the blue whale, and it's not clear that they can avoid the ships. When you think about it, they have not evolved to have to deal with anything larger than they are that moves.
You work for an air pollution control district. How did you get involved in protecting whales?
We have been documenting the huge amount of air pollution from ships that go through the channel in our emission inventory since 1994, and the NOx emissions from these ships really threaten our ability to attain air quality standards.
And NOx, for people who are not familiar with that term, is?
Nitrogen oxides, and it's a key ingredient in the formation of ground-level ozone, which we know of as smog. In Santa Barbara County, we do not meet the state standard for ground-level ozone. We just barely meet the federal ozone standard, and as we've gotten successful with programs onshore reducing pollution, the concern grows about the shipping emissions because NOx emissions from these ships really threaten our ability to attain air quality standards.
If you solve the ship air emission problem, do you solve the attainment problem?
Well, it depends on how big a program we're able to fund because they do produce a significant piece of the NOx emissions in our county when we look at our inventory. And we are running out of things to do onshore to achieve the big ticket NOx reductions. So that's why we've been focusing so much energy on shipping.
Can you tell us about the other folks involved in this program and how it works?
Well, the Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary and the Environmental Defense Center, who are two principal partners in this, have been very concerned about whale protection in the Santa Barbara Channel. And one of the things they settled on was reducing the ship speed as a strategy to provide an immediate benefit in protection of whales. So when they came to us and said, we have an interest in whale protection, you have an interest in pollution reduction, let's work together, it was a great match. And in fact, the studies show when you slow a ship down to 12 knots, you can cut the air pollution almost in half. And not just NOx, but a range of other air pollutants as well. And the studies also have shown that when you reduce the ship's speed, you're making it much less likely that a ship strike will kill a whale. So we have a lot of common ground here to work with, and we call it protecting blue skies and blue whales.
And how fast would those ships have been going if they didn't reduce to 12 knots?
This particular ship had to have a previous rated speed through the channel, average speed of 14 knots or greater. We provided an incentive payment of $2,500 per transit. So they're agreeing to go down to 12 knots for the incentive payment.
You've got a lot of interest from air pollution control districts. Can you tell us about the positive results?
Even a small-scale trial like this one, we've achieved more than 16 tons of NOx reductions. The primary months where these transits happen were July through October, which is not just the peak whale season in the channel, but it's also the peak ozone or smog pollution season for our county. So it's the timing of the reduction as well as the fact of the reduction.
Mary, you had a number of shipping lines participate in this program. Which ones, and any sense of why those particular lines did it?
We had 7 global shipping companies participate, and they all get credit for being a part of this program. Costco, Hapag-Lloyd, K-Line, Maersk, Matson, Mitsui, OSK Lines, and United Arab Shipping Company were all a part of this. The Maersk line in particular, we talked to years ago. They came and did a presentation for us to sort of help us understand how the industry worked. And the Pacific Merchant Shipping Association was extremely helpful in helping us structure the program, helping us understand what the shipping industry needed. In the first year, we got great participation from the shipping industry. We have documented emission reductions. We laid the groundwork that we were hoping to lay for a bigger program.
What's next for the program?
We would like to be able to fund many, many more transits to be 12 knots or slower through the channel to try to grow this into a full-scale channel program and then eventually statewide and maybe even bigger.
Mary Bird of Santa Barbara County Air Pollution Control speaking with Living on Earth's John Duff.